Hello again, or if you are new here, welcome to Just From There channel. Here we are traveling around the world and doing crazy things, so consider subscription. In this episode I'll try to climb Mount Manaslu, the 8th highest peak with an altitude of 8,163 meters. In the previous video I reached Camp 2 at the altitude of 6,400 meters, injured my knee on the ice fall and barely managed to go back to the base camp. And that was just a beginning of an adventure. For more details, see the link to the episode in the description. Now let's continue the adventure. I'm in a base camp and thinking what to do next and how to deal with my injured knee. I visited a doctor. Yes, there is a dedicated doctor in 7th Summit Trek Basecamp. He said that most probably this is a muscle problem, not a ligament injury, and gave me special Iranian ointment. After one full day of rest in the base camp, my knee feels much better. I can walk, slowly but almost no pain. Bad news, everyone!
By the time you watch this tape, I'll be gone.
Weather forecast says that in 7 days there will be big snowfall, about 1.5 meters of fresh snow. What does it mean for me? Make a summit push before or wait for the next weather window? Wait. I already had the same situation on Lhotse. I waited for the ideal weather window, and there was a snowfall. Not really snowfall, just some snowy days, like 40 centimeters of fresh snow, and it was enough to destroy the rope, and ropes with avalanches. And here, 1.5 meters predicted. No way, I have to do it before, because I believe after the snowfall chances to get a summit is almost zero. Ropes will be destroyed by avalanches, or at least buried under snow, and after a few days that snow is hard as a rock. So, now or never. But wait, I have a problem with my knee. Oh fuck. Surprisingly, just after 2 days of rest in the base camp and applying that magical Iranian ligament, I managed to go to the crampon point and back to the base camp. And I decided to give it a try, and the next day I wanted to start an ascent. As you remember, at the very beginning I said that I want to make it without oxygen. Now it is obvious that I cannot do it in these circumstances. I'm not enough acclimatized. Just one night in Camp 1 and one night in Camp 2. It is definitely not enough, and I have no time to do one more rotation before the snowfall. I decided it is better to have a summit with oxygen than not have it at all, and I bought 2 bottles of oxygen. One of them I'm going to carry from base camp. It costs me $500, and the second one I'm going to pick up in Camp 2. Which costs $700. I just want to minimize the weight and keep my knee safe as far as possible. Also, from the base camp I have to go directly to Camp 2, because my tent and all the stuff is there. I have nothing to have a night in Camp 1. Yeah, see how complicated everything is. Knee, weather, oxygen, weight, equipment deposits, camps. There is a joke. Mountaineering is not like chess. You actually have to think here. Sorry, all cheese lovers. Sorry, all chess lovers. As planned, the next day I'm heading to Camp 2. I wanted to have my backpack as light as possible, but it is anyway heavy. I have 1 bottle of oxygen, a regulator and an oxygen mask, my down suit, summit mittens, some additional snacks and some electronics. I guess the total weight is about 15 kilos. Not much, but not as small as I wanted. I started right after breakfast to have enough time to get to the Camp 2. The same way I already did. This time it is much easier. Acclimatization works. I'm walking slowly and carefully to protect the knee. So far, so good. Short rest in Camp 1 and continue the ascent. Now there are much less climbers on the way. I think most of them had a night in Camp 1 and started ascending to Camp 2 early this day. Good for me.
Finally, I'm in Camp 2. It was long day. I started from Basecamp about 9:30 and arrived about 5:30 p.m. to Camp 2. It was very exhausting day.
Pitched my tent on the same spot, so no need to dig snow once again. Today I'm going to carry my oxygen to the Camp 3. I brought one from Basecamp and the second one was waiting for me here in Camp 2. Before the night I'm going to be back here in Camp 2. The way to Camp 3 is not so long, it's about 3 or 4 hours up and less than 1 hour down. There are a couple of difficult sections, but in general it is less demanding than the way from Camp 1 to Camp 2. All went according to the plan, and I'm back in Camp 2. One more night here and tomorrow I'm going back to Camp 3 with equipment for the summit push, down suit, mittens and snacks. The next morning I packed all the stuff that I needed for the summit in the backpack. And all the stuff that I do not need, I leave here in Camp 2. So I left the tent and the sleeping bag. I'm not going to sleep in Camp 3. According to my plan, I'll arrive there at lunchtime and then I'm gonna start further ascent at sunset.
First queue today, so I'm gonna wait here maybe 10-15 minutes while all these people made most of the uphill, and then in my pace I can slowly do it. Weather is good. Here in the bottom there is a Camp 2, and there is in the clouds it's a base camp.
One thing that I decided to take with me at the last moment is my sleeping mat, so I can sit or lay in Camp 3. I don't have any tent or other place to rest there. And it was damn good idea. When I arrived in Camp 3, there was plenty of people. Climbers going down from the summit, climbers that will go tonight to the summit. I barely found relatively flat spot to put my mat right on the snow. There is nothing to do there, so I just relaxed until the moment when the sun set behind the ridge. Before it was warm, no wind, hot sun, and 1 minute after it became so fucking cold, so I rushed to take on my down suit. All climbers started slowly preparing all needed for the summit push. The first group started about 5 p.m. The main amount of people, I guess more than 100 climbers, plus the same amount of Sherpa guides, started from Camp 3 from 6 to 6:30 p.m. I decided that I'm the smartest guy here, and do not want to go with the crowd and wait in the queues on the wall in the middle of the night. So when all those people left the camp, I crawled in the storage tent to sleep.
That's a great plan.
3 hours later, at about 9 p.m., I started my ascent. Small side note here. I have very few videos from the ascent. It's dark, so nothing to show except black screen, and it is very hard to film. So I gonna use some shots from the way down just to show you what it looks like. But keep in mind that ascent was in complete darkness. There was nobody around, just some lights far ahead. The weather is good, almost no wind, good visibility, and relatively warm, I think about minus 15 degrees Celsius. Almost right after I left the camp, there is a steep slope without any flat spot to rest. I hate this part of the climbing experience, when you have to climb in the darkness. Nothing is going on, you just move your legs, but nothing changes around. Same small spot of light, the same snow and ice, and endless rope. After a few hours I managed to catch up with the Sherpa guy. He was climbing without oxygen, so that is why he was slower than me. The group of lights far ahead of me remains at the same distance, at least it doesn't seem getting any closer, but it's hard to judge. Climbing alone at night on this huge mountain feels absolutely mental and scary. I wish to have somebody around. Maybe staying in queues is not so bad. That was my thoughts at that time. After a few more hours I reached the upper part of the slope. There was a significant wind that blew the snow from the slope above, and I found out a new problem of climbing alone. No footprints in deep fresh snow. There was a section that almost destroyed me, a very steep slope that you need to traverse uphill. Take a step and you slide with the snow back to the same place. It was a fight, but finally I managed to do it. Suddenly I'm on an almost flat surface, and there is a wide good trail on the snow. I was surprised. Should I expect to see a mountain hut with apple pie and mulled wine next? But there was just Camp 4, at an altitude of 7,400 meters. Some tents, some lights and some people. And actually here was the coldest place. I was inside a cloud, mist around, quite windy, and the time just before the sunrise, maybe about 4 am. It felt very humid and cold. I just took a rest for 5 minutes to eat a snack and drink some hot water, but was forced to move by this cold. Here the terrain is much easier, no need to use a Jumar. There are places where there is no rope at all, just some sticks to mark the way. So it should be easier to walk here, but the altitude. I take a few steps, well, maybe not few, more like 10 or 20, and need some time to catch a breeze. Step by step, slowly but steadily. Here, the upper part of Camp 4, a few more small tents. At this time, it began to get light. And it already started to feel much better. At least you see where are you now and the path. And it is long way ahead, endless slope and no summit I can see. Right after Camp 4 I finally managed to meet some other climbers on the way up. They were walking so slow, so I passed them. And starting from this point there were many other groups and climbers, some on the way up, some on the way down, most probably without a summit. It is too early to reach the summit and went down to this point. Few hours later, I started to worry if I have enough oxygen. I'm on a second bottle now. The first one I already left on the way to Camp 4. There is a funny, or actually maybe not so funny story, rather sad. I'll tell you about it at the end of this video, so watch till the end. So, now I'm using my second and the last bottle of oxygen, and there is 110 bars left out of 270. According to my current consumption, 2 liters of oxygen per minute, and the size of the bottle of 4 liters, I have 440 liters, which means 220 minutes, so slightly less than 4 hours. When I'm calculating this at home, it is so easy and obvious, but there, on the altitude about 7,600 meters, in the thin air, it was rocket science to calculate. I did it like 10 times and still wasn't sure if I had the right answer. How much time do I need to reach the summit? Do I have some oxygen for the way down? What if I run out of oxygen right on the top of the mountain? I was asking almost each person how far is the summit, and the answer was not satisfying. Maybe 3 hours, maybe more. Sometime later, I met a guy who was fixing something on the side of the trail. Next to him there was a mitten laying on the snow. Accidentally I spot that this is not typical brand that everybody use here. It is Ukrainian brand, and I was surprised and said, "Привіт," which means hello, and apparently I know this guy. We already met on Lodze. What a surprise! I shared my concerns about oxygen, and he confirmed my calculations and said that there is more or less 2.5 hours to the summit. So I have something to breathe till the summit and something to go down lower than 8,000 meters, in theory. With this conclusion, I continued to ascend. And after more or less 2 hours, suddenly I reached the place from which I see the summit. And it is very close, literally close. I'm almost there. What a surprise! During the whole way, there were some doubts. What if? You know, the weather is getting worse. I'm out of oxygen. I can't go any farther. Lot of things can go wrong. At that moment, I understood. I'll do it. Weather is perfect, sunny, no wind, still have some oxygen. This place is at the base of the false summit. Before 2022, almost all expeditions use this false summit as the end point. But the true summit is few meters higher and few hundred meters farther. There is a super steep slope that you have to traverse to real summit. Nothing technically difficult, just very exposed section. Nothing below you, almost a vertical wall. One more turn behind the rock and I see the summit, just 15 meters from me, and the queue of climbers. The summit is super narrow. There are places just for 2 or maximum 3 people, and everyone is willing to have a photo from the summit. Also, it is required to confirm that you actually reached it. After 10 minutes of waiting, I'm finally on the top of Mount Manaslu, the 8th highest peak in the world, with an altitude of 8,163 meters. The time is 8:40 am, so it took almost 12 hours of climbing from Camp 3 to the summit. Of course, I took a couple of photos and few shots to show you here. So like and subscribe for my effort. As you can see, the weather is perfect. No wind, sunny, good visibility above the clouds. Actually, there are a couple of other 8,000ers that you can spot from the top. Now it is the time to go back down. Despite the way down is much easier and faster, it is extremely hard. My body is already exhausted from the long climb, and it is not only my problem. I saw some people that barely can walk without help of Sherpas. I cannot rely on help. And don't forget that I also want to shoot some videos. The way to Camp 4 is relatively simple, just walking, so I did it with some breaks for rest and filming. And after Camp 4, there is that super steep section. What can I say? During the day it is not so scary, especially on the way down. And now there is no wind that wipes out all footprints. I picked up my first bottle of oxygen that I left during ascent, and around 2 p.m. I'm in Camp 3. Here I take a longer break to rest. I am so happy that I have my sleeping mat here. I took a nap before continuing descent to Camp 2. If you remember, all my equipment is there, tent, sleeping bag, food, so I have to go there, I can't stay in Camp 3. Fortunately it is quite close, and after 1 more hour I was there around 5:30 p.m. The chief in the kitchen tent was so kind that gave me something to drink. Since the start of the summit push I have maybe 2 liters of water in total. Starting from the summit, I felt thirsty. As soon as I was in the tent, I fell asleep. Despite wanting to have some dinner, woke up at 9 p.m. I decided that it was too late to eat and fall asleep again. The next morning it's time to pack all my stuff and go down. The backpack was so heavy that I decided to leave something there. So I left all the rest of the food, gas and even some clothes. All because of those oxygen bottles that are damn heavy. Couple of times I stayed in queues in difficult places between Camp 2 and Camp 1, so it was good to have some rest. That fucking backpack is killing me, so heavy. At the end of the way I felt like I need to rest every 10 meters. In Camp 1 I have a longer rest before the final push to the base camp. It was very long and exhausting, but nothing interesting, and finally I'm in a base camp. Congratulations from the team and other climbers, many of them also did it the same day or the day before me. There was a celebration cake from our kitchen team, and finally I can have a beer. In expedition I do not drink any alcohol before the summit, and here I could finish this episode, but I promised to tell you the story about my oxygen. Meanwhile you can see how that snowfall changed the camp. And apparently that was one of the strongest snowfalls in years. Down the mountain there were record-breaking rains. More than 200 people have been killed and thousands of houses damaged by the flood. After the snowfall, no climbers managed to reach the summit despite trying. The way to Camp 4 was destroyed. So I'm glad that I made the right decision. Back to an oxygen story. Before leaving the Camp 4, I plugged the regulator and the mask to the bottle and put it to the backpack. After some time, maybe 1 hour of climbing, I noticed a very quiet sizzling sound from the backpack, but I decided that it is okay. Probably that is the way the regulator works, and continued ascent. And a short time after, I felt that it was actually very hard to breathe. That is definitely not how it's supposed to be. I checked the marker in the oxygen pipe and it was on 0, so no oxygen was coming. What the heck? I took off the backpack to check what was going on and saw that the pressure gauge on my oxygen bottle was 0, so it is empty. There should be enough oxygen for about 8 hours for 2 liters per minute consumption, and I was on 1.5 liters. Probably I did not tighten enough the regulator and there was a leak between the bottle and the regulator. Or maybe something is wrong with the regulator itself, dead seal or something. I don't know, and anyway there is no way to fix it there. This was kinda disaster. I've lost half of my oxygen at the very beginning of the way. Anyway, I decided to continue until I can. I plugged the second and the last bottle of oxygen, tried to screw it on as tight as I could, and no leaks. At least I could hear no sizzling. So I left an empty bottle there, just stuck in the snow to pick up on the way back. Since that point, I constantly was listening to suspicious sounds and checked the consumption many times. All was good. The rest of the story you already know. And one more thing. When I was returning bottles at the base camp, I noticed that one of them is significantly heavier than another one, and I thought maybe it wasn't totally empty. Maybe the pressure gauge was on zero because the regulator was simply unscrewed from the bottle, and maybe there was plenty of oxygen. We'll never know. Thank you for staying with me till this moment. If anybody is still here, let me know in the comments. If you like the story, please subscribe and hit the like button. Feel free to check other videos on the channel. In this expedition I used some equipment of the brand Turbat. I have a base layer, fleece jacket and waterproof jacket. I used it all the time during trekking, rotation and even summit push. And I'm seriously impressed. Whether I'm climbing, trekking or just spending time outdoors, it always works for me. It is designed and produced in Ukraine, but you can find and buy it in many European countries and Canada, New Zealand and Korea. This is not an ad, they didn't pay me. I just wanna share my experience and support them. So if you need great equipment and you also want to support the Ukrainian brand, you are more than welcome. I'll leave the link in the description.
Now I'm leaving base camp and heading back home.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.